I was browsing YouTube recently and this video caught my eye. If Red Dead Redemption 2 ended like The Last of Us 2. Spoiler alert for both games, it shows the final standoff between John and Micah, but here they spare each other when John recalls a memory of Arthur. It's a well-made machinima, and I recommend checking out Point Zero's other videos for more interesting clips from the game. But ultimately it doesn't really make much sense, and judging by the comments, a lot of people seem to think that it justifies why The Last of Us Part 2's ending doesn't make much sense either. I think it does the opposite. To me, it exemplifies why these two games are, surprisingly, quite similar thematically. But it'll take more than a split-screen comparison or machinima video to do that, so let's take a deeper look at why Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Last of Us Part 2 are shockingly similar. The cycle of violence is a key moral theme in Red Dead Redemption 2. The Van der Linde gang's unlawful and violent acts have brought them to the attention of the law. To try to escape, they bestow violence upon anyone who gets in their way, and in the process, they lose several friends and loved ones. When Arthur, facing his own mortality, realizes the futility of this cycle, he tries to break free. He absolves the debts of those who owe the gang, he gives money to the family of a man he killed. But when he tries to help the Native Americans peacefully keep their land, Dutch interferes, and the cycle of violence continues. And Arthur, with little choice left, makes the ultimate sacrifice to break the cycle. He disregards his loyalty to the gang, the blind loyalty he has held onto for decades, to save a family. 8 years later, John struggles to break free from the violence that he has grown so accustomed to. He eventually settles on a ranch with his family, but when faced with the option to chase down Micah, the man responsible for the downfall of the gang and for Arthur's early demise, he doesn't hesitate. John had managed to finally distance himself from that life, and while some of his work was still violent, it was legal. He had the option to walk away there and then, to forget about his past and continue to live a happy life raising his son with his wife. But he chooses not to. Despite Abigail's pleas, John tracks down and kills Micah's friends before doing the same to Micah. And it's because of this choice that the law discovers Micah's body and track down the killer at his home. And 4 years later, they kidnap his family, force him to do their bidding, and kill him in cold blood. Had John decided to leave Micah alone, he might still be working on his ranch with his family. But his decision, and his death at the hands of the law, turned his son into the one thing he had spent so much time trying to avoid. And the cycle of violence continues. In The Last of Us, and especially in the 20 years that we don't see, Joel is a violent man. He tortures and kills a lot of people, some of them innocent. But unlike Arthur, Joel actually has a choice in the sacrifice he makes, and neither involve him. Either he sacrifices the closest thing he's had to a daughter in 20 years so that humanity may have a chance to survive, or he sacrifices humanity to save a young girl. He chooses the latter, and in doing so continues the cycle of violence. Over the next 4 years, Joel's violence subsides a little. He learns, even more than before, how to love, how to be part of a community, and how to accept and help others. He's clearly still a little hesitant towards strangers, but not as violent and standoffish as he once was. Sadly, it's this new caring side of him that leads to his demise. Because of course, his previous actions have consequences. The surgeon he killed had a daughter, and she spent the next 4 years rigorously training in order to track down and kill Joel. And when he happens to stumble upon her, he saves her. He helps her get back to her friends. And then she kills him. Unlike John Marston, Ellie, who witnessed Joel's death, doesn't have to wait 8 years to seek revenge. She immediately sets off to find Abby, and when she arrives in Seattle, she spends 3 days killing her friends and tracking her down, which brings Abby to her. Ellie is overpowered and almost killed, but at Lev's insistence, Abby lets her go. She chooses to end the cycle of violence that has interrupted both of their lives for so many years, and spares the woman who killed her friends. Almost a year later, Ellie struggles to break free from the violence. She has settled on a ranch with Dina and her son JJ, but she suffers from PTSD as a result of Joel's death. When faced with the option to chase down Abby, she hesitates, but ultimately she can't live with herself. Despite Dina's pleas, Ellie tracks down Abby. She frees her from captivity, forces her to fight, and then spares her. Like Abby did to her back in Seattle, Ellie chooses to once again end the cycle of violence and spares the woman who killed her father figure. But regardless of Ellie's choice to spare Abby, her decision to chase after her had consequences. She returns to an empty farm. Dina, upset with Ellie's decision with revenge, has abandoned her and taken JJ. Ellie, who lost 2 fingers in her fight with Abby, can no longer play the guitar that Joel gifted her. Her obsession with the cycle of violence has taken everything from her, and her biggest fear,
I'm scared of ending up alone.
has come true. I've heard a lot of people say that Ellie should have killed Abby at the end, comparing it to John killing Micah, and that's certainly a valid opinion to have, but I think comparing Abby to Micah proves why one of them deserved to be spared. Micah tore the gang apart, sold them out to the law, killed Miss Grimshaw, sent Arthur to a premature grave, and continued his reign of terror with his own gang, including murder, dismemberment, and killing a young girl's family. Abby killed the man who killed her father, killed Jesse and crippled Tommy, spared Ellie and Dina, led Ellie to the boats to escape, and fought Ellie when she held up Lev at knife point. Had John spared Micah, well, technically Dutch killed Micah and John finished him off, but if he had spared him, Micah would have killed John, tracked down his family, and harmed or killed them. Micah's entire life was killing and hurting others. The dissolution of the Van der Linde gang did not put a stop to that, in fact it accelerated it. Micah could not go on the way he had been, and John put an end to that. When Ellie spared Abby, however, she was freeing a captured woman and a young child. Abby was not going to track her down and kill her. Not only was she most certainly not in the physical state to even consider it, but she had already spared Ellie before, and she has Lev to look after now. Ellie was giving her a chance to survive, just as Joel had done to her several years earlier, no matter how wrong he may have been in doing so. But despite having opposite outcomes, both of these games have very similar messages in their conclusions. That sometimes it's best to let things go. I don't think it's necessarily about forgiveness. I think that's a big part of Ellie and Joel's story, but I don't think Ellie necessarily forgave Abby at the end, nor do I think that Micah deserved any ounce of forgiveness. But ultimately, by choosing not to let go of the past and live in the moment with their families, both John and Ellie destroyed their lives. John ignored his wife's plea, continued the cycle of violence, and died for it. Ellie ignored her girlfriend's plea, pursued the cycle of violence, and lost everything. That's what these endings are about. The destructive nature of the cycle of violence, the love of family and not taking it for granted, and the importance of forgiving and forgetting, or at least making an effort towards it. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche spoke about the inevitability of fate and the need to love it no matter how insufferable it may be, and no matter what losses we may incur. I do not want to wage war against what is ugly. I do not want to accuse. I do not even want to accuse those who accuse. Looking away shall be my only negation. Perhaps John and Ellie should have looked away too.